Trying to do this, and I think we are live. What's up, guys? We're here with Crypto Sloth, and
what's up, everyone?
What's up? Good to see you, brother. It's been a while since we chatted, and we're gonna be talking about some good stuff today. So, I had I have music playing in the background. I have some interesting numbers that I was running in the background, and I wanted to hear your thoughts as well. And we also have somebody else coming on in the green room.
What up?
What's up?
What up, guys?
Hey, so what's good, brother?
It's so beautiful out today. It was hard to get myself to sit down in front of the computer. I was like, the sun's out.
What part of the country are you guys located in?
Kind of southern Midwest. I'm north of Texas.
I'm East Coast in the South.
Okay, I'm in Florida, and it is gorgeous outside.
Nice.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice out here too.
Well, okay, so you guys have met each other before, I'm assuming, or at least
I haven't.
No, but I recognize the name.
Yeah, we've had a couple Twitter interactions, like DMs and stuff. But it's a pleasure to meet you on stream, man.
Yeah, dude, nice. I love that we're just hanging out. I was like, man, I'm running late, but Sam's on top of everything, dude. He's like, let me just get everyone on.
Yeah,
I wanted to figure out how to do the live thing. I've never done this before on my channel, and I love the interaction between the chat live and being able to actually have a conversation with people and going back and forth. It's not something that I'm used to. I've been making content online for a long time, but
dude, you've got over 6,000 subscribers on YouTube, and the engagement's nowhere. We gotta pump your algo, man.
I have many YouTube channels or whatever, so
dude, you're a workhorse.
It's impressive.
So I had the idea, and I know I want to talk to both of you guys about this because a lot of other people I think might just not find it super interesting or maybe understand, and it's a little bit more complex if you think about options, right?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a call option, right, you pay a premium, and then you have a future time period which you could make money if the price goes up, if you're long a call option, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about setting something up where you take fiat and you borrow that? So I know people in this community do not like leverage.
Dude, you're cool. That's why I had to get on your channel, because I was like, hey, different people have different tastes and stuff, and I'm happy to talk about all of it. So let's go into it, dude.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the idea, right? So I'm refinancing this house, and I'm gonna take. There's a bunch of equity in the house. The house is tripled in value in the last 5 years.
How could it not be?
But you can take, say, just for example, take $100,000. You can take $100,000 and say that increases my payment by $550 per month. So that take 550 times, say, 24 months. And this way, I'm not using my money. I'm using the bank's money to make the payment for the next 24 months. That goes into a separate account that just pays the mortgage every single month. So I take, that's $7,000 roughly or something thereabouts. So I take $7,000, put it into account, and that just pays the bill every single month for me. So it's kind of getting a free option that I may have to pay for in the future. Now, the $93,000, there's going to be fees on there. So I take $93,000 and I stake that in Hex for 24 months. Or you could split this up and do it over, say, 2 years and 4 years, or 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. But this way, I can set it up so that I get a free call option payoff in the future without actually have to pay for it today, which is astonishing. You could do the numbers with $10,000. You could go do the credit card things that I was talking about, on that kind of thing. And I'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts are, because it's fascinating to me.
Crypto Sloth, you can jump in if you want, because I could rant about this for a minute.
Okay. Yeah. So I personally like the kind of risk to reward analysis that you're running on here, where it's okay, I'm going to give myself this set amount of time to allow the price to appreciate or not depreciate enough where the Hex APY can cover the margin that you're making to be in profit over time. And I think that's the kind of thinking that is necessary when you're dealing with leverage in crypto, or you're dealing in leverage in general. You need to give yourself a time buffer, and then you also need to know exactly when you need to know exactly kind of what cutoffs the price needs to be at in order for you to be profitable over time. And that's kind of where my head has been at. That general principle that you discussed with the mortgages have been for Hadron loans, where you take your advance against your loan, and then you calculate the different scenarios of the price going up with Hadron or price going down with Hadron, as well as whatever asset you're buying. For me, particularly, it's LP assets, the price of those assets going up, those assets going down, chart that out, and then you see exactly where you're profitable and when you're not to make the 30-day payments. So that's just a long-winded way of me saying I like the principle of where you're going. And while I don't know the specifics in the real estate market necessarily, that's a lot of where my head's been at. If that makes sense.
I thought you nailed it when you talked about having a respect for whatever the time frame is and buying yourself a little bit of time, because I think that's when we don't talk about the nuance of how that changes the dynamic. That's why I think people get really tripped up quickly in the community when we say like, oh, borrowing is kind of like taboo. I think it's because they're not getting a full enough picture. I think it's a brilliant move. Otherwise, it's logically contradictory, and you should probably have an inverse portfolio if you believe that crypto is here to stay, or I'm sorry, that fiat is here to stay and crypto is going to like just wither away. Then it's bizarre to me that you're even investing in it in the first place. If it's a very small percentage of your bag, if you're a very conservative, speculative crypto investor, then that's cool. Like then that's probably the one argument that you could just say like, no, I don't engage. But other than that, so personally, I saw the writing on the wall with the previous election cycle and identifying, regardless of the outcome of the election, identifying aspects like inflation. You know, we have to pay the piper eventually for spending. And as well as it was sort of like, okay, and on one hand, perhaps there's an economy that continues this robust boom, and my salary kind of maintains pace. I was in supply chain, so that would have, as you can see with the rise in fuel prices and stuff, you would stay pretty competitive. The money is still there to pay for your services. So I had to take the alternative look, though, of, well, what if there's runaway inflation? And what if my salary doesn't keep up with that? And in times of runaway inflation, it would actually be nice to have like a fixed rate loan. And so I leveraged the timeline required to go and get an MBA. And I said, I'm going to go lock in before the election. I'm going to go utilize the CARES Act, liquidate my 401k without early termination fee. Use that to settle all of my affairs right away in cash. Didn't have to worry about being kind of tied down to a location. And then I chose a location that I want to go for a degree. But that has bought me a time frame now where I'm able to outpace whatever this increased interest is on the principal of my loans. And I have the equity in crypto, and it's compounding in that same time frame. So it was a no-brainer back when I made the decision. I felt very convicted about it, and I still do, and it's paid off tremendously. It's been that.
And not only that, but it's been 0% interest rate on student loans for quite some time now.
As Sam has been bringing up in some of his content, and it's like, dude, thank you, because I'm going to write a book about it one day. Because I'm waiting for this sleepy dude to just wipe out the student loan debt altogether, and then I'm going to look like the prophet of markets.
I'm in school right now, in professional school, which are pretty expensive overall. And I mean, like, if student debt actually like gets wiped, it would be like the craziest thing ever.
Yeah,
my student loans. Go ahead.
Cut the check.
My student loans say that I don't have to pay them. Like, in all reality, and I don't think I've said this, and people are probably going to think it's fucking weird, but I haven't paid on my student loans since I finished grad school in 2011. So in 11 years, I paid all of $0 fucking dollars on.
It's incredible. And look at how well you've been able to do with that money in the meantime. It's like, really, we were just going to bleed it out to the government, and that was going to be the most productive lifestyle? No way.
So did you guys? I missed what you said. So you closed out your 401k, but I think that's so interesting because I don't know, Crypto Sloth, if you'll ever have a 401k or if you had one, but like I
just
closed
a Roth IRA.
Did you close that out too?
I took out the principal that I put in. I couldn't bring myself to liquidate the whole thing, just because. And I thought about why, and the reason why, it's my ultimate failsafe. Like if something goes happen, I get hacked or I like have a security mess up, I have a nest egg there to restart myself immediately. And while maybe financially in terms of rewards or price appreciation, it's better to get my Hex, Pulsechain, all of that now, but psychologically it allows me to stay in the game sufficiently, which is everything. Like I can't discount that factor when it comes to being in this market.
Yeah, talk about the value of peace of mind all the time.
Yeah.
It's worth everything.
You have to be able to like stay in it like psychologically, because otherwise, and that's why I think talking about leverage or options is like so foreign.
Yeah,
because
but it's mostly, in my opinion, it's because the people that are presenting that information tend to be from a predatory like business proposition, whereas the content that you're putting out and that we're talking about right now is just purely casual conversation, and that's empowering.
And I used to be a pretty debt averse person, like just in general, even though I never had much of a financial footprint just because of my age and where I was. But like as I begin to understand some of these financial vectors using debt, I was like, oh, this is like a really powerful tool to build like your entire asset class or your entire portfolio over time. I'm like, if you do it correctly with the proper risk management and with the proper like size of your portfolio, like it's almost like you're just generating free money, like generating free capital. Like it's pretty incredible. And especially now that we can go ahead.
No. You go
now that we can do it in a decentralized, trustless way where we don't have to go to some credit card company or bank to get the leverage that we want. Like with Hadron, my specific kind of favorite thing, it's like, we have a decentralized line of credit whenever we want. We just go to the contract, get our asset, and then do whatever we want with it. We don't have to ask anybody or get permission to be able to take advantage of these tools that for the longest time, only the elite and only the people who've already made it get access to.
Yes. When you, Orca had mentioned it, when you get into debt and you think about it relative to inflation, like if you have fixed debt during an inflationary period of time, that means like you're using future earning, like it just, right? It's just like an intelligence.
It's like, it's the way you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
they can play whatever games they want. It's like, as long as you know what that implies, then try to stay on the edge of that.
So in the $100,000 example, it's like a little bit harder to grasp because then people are like, don't have the capacity to pay $100,000 as like an option premium. But I ran the numbers for like a $20,000 line of credit on a credit card, right? So I can just take that credit card, I can charge my business, which means I pay like 2 3/4 or 3% basically. So I take the 20,000 on my card, put it through my business. Now I'm going to be paying interest on my credit card. At the same time, I set up a 0 APY for 24 months credit card that I can transfer it to. So transfer the balance. Now I pay 0%. I just paid 3% to get it, but now I pay 0% for 24 months. I take that 20 grand. Again, I say the payment's $300 a month. I take 300 times 24, put that into a savings account that pays the bill. And then at the end of that time period, there's, I think, the total amount that I put into crypto or into Hex would be like $14,000, $13,500 or something. And it's just depending on fees and whatnot.
Yeah.
So if I took that, right? Because even if it's $13,000 a premium that I have to pay, that means that Hex would have gone to 0 at the end of my stake. At 0, that's $13,000 that I would have to pay. Okay, cool. That's 2 years away. Like it's a risk I'm willing to take, but the upside is like if that goes even back to 56 cents, like it's 200 grand, 300 grand. Like,
yep.
Yeah, that's why for me it's a no-brainer, is because whenever you want to entertain the outcome where it doesn't work in your favor, it quickly has to spiral into like some weird doomsday scenario. Like, do you foresee a world where crypto doesn't succeed? Because if crypto succeeds, Hex is fine. It'll succeed along with it. And so unless you're going to tell me that the only safe haven is truly like a 401k, it's like, well, then the debt that you're going to be paying in a world where crypto didn't work out is going to be way worse than student loan debt. It's going to be life debt, slavery. You don't really have a say in any of your financial outcomes, except for whatever you've achieved thus far. Have fun. So it's like that. To me, it's why it's a no-brainer. And I really like the idea of how you were able to just put together a chain of like maintaining the debt in such a way that you're not only fixed, but you almost have no obligation to the debt. And so you really are, in essence, because the confidence and the conviction behind the strategy, you're in essence just arbitraging the present value of your money and crushing them
Well,
in terms of the loan.
Exactly.
Think about if somebody is like risk averse, and I'm not saying that anybody should do this strategy, but say somebody's risk averse, right? So you pull out $100,000, whether it's a business line or your house or whatever, 100,000, and then you're like, oh man, it's super risk averse. Like, what if Hex goes from 13 cents down to 5 cents, right? And then I have to start paying that bill. I don't want to pay $550 for the next 30 years. Okay, cool. Well, why don't you do the same thing and do it for 60 months? We're 80% down. Where do you think, if you're bullish on crypto, if you're bullish on Hex, if you see the future with this black hole that is crypto, it continues to suck up the rest of society? Like, what do you think is going to be here in 5 years?
And then I want to let Slav talk, but you're just getting my juices flowing right now. What if you proportioned the capital that you're going to put into the Hex stake? What if you utilize like the HSI function of Hedron? What if you partition a small amount of the Hex in such a way that's staked for so long that the implied market value of transferring the sale of the embodied stake, the encapsulated stake, may be able to provide you a windfall if you were to see volatility right as you go to secure your Hex? If the volatility at that moment worked against you in such a way that we have a famous 80% drop, and now you're in some way not receiving a very large benefit, you still have this longer pays better kind of cushion that you could flip as like a solid one-time sale. And then that gives you just a little flexibility in the immediate term to maybe utilize a pump on the Hex that might come later.
I think that's a great idea. And to add a layer on top of that, I don't know how many people know about this, but with the advanced function in Hadron, you could actually prepay as many payments as you want. So like you take your loan, take 50% of it and just pay it off immediately. You don't pay a premium on it and you don't have to make a payment until like that halfway mark anyways. So it's like not even like the automatic payments that you were talking about before. It's just you don't have a payment until like, say you do a 10-year stake, you take an advance out on half of it. You don't have to start paying till that year 5 date. So like you don't even like, there is no risk. There is no, the price of the asset doesn't matter in those 5 years because you've already paid it off. And now you can just, take your advance and go earn.
And the other thing, so say if you're what Orca was saying, like what if there's an anomaly event that happens in 5 years, right? Where it goes up to $7, right? And then in 5 year time, it's back at 6 cents or something, right? Because then you're like, oh shit, this is coming due. Like this is not a good time. Because then you could also just break that up so you don't have that risk, right? So you do say 100 grand into 5 states, like 20, 20, 20, right? 2 years out, 4 years out, et cetera, all the way out to 10 years. And then you break up that risk so you don't even have the risk of something coming due. But then in 2 years, if the price is $1, you just paid off that whole 100 grand by itself right there. And that doesn't it's just crazy.
That to me is like the natural flow, like the osmosis of legacy finance going into cryptos. Because when I put together that same chain, that's very similar to this chain that you're talking about, a little different with like real estate, but it's the same concept, right? The flow of money. It's a no-brainer, man. Unless we're going to go into an apocalypse.
What do you like? So I'm just learning more because I don't remember everything from back in 2011. The flow of money, right? Or like the speed at which money changes hands. Do you guys pay attention to that? Because it has an effect on the value of that money. But I don't fully understand that. Like, there's a term for it, and the faster it changes hands, the more of an effect. The velocity of the money. Let me pull up a thing and just see what it says. And I don't know anything about it, and I'm just like, I've heard it before, and I just want to learn more. If you guys have thoughts on it, feel free to share them.
You bet.
This is not something I'm personally knowledgeable of.
I can tackle it, and I'm actually going to lean on by Pulsex commented, "Hey, Orchid, did psychedelics help you understand finance better?" Yes, it actually did. And here's one of the things that it helped me understand. That there's a lot of details, but not all of them are core to understanding the dynamic. And so you have a lot of moving pieces, and that doesn't mean that you have to understand all of them. There's really some meat and potatoes that makes a lot of clarity appear as you begin to introduce yourself to some of these peripheral concepts. So when Sam brought up the velocity of money, there's a relationship between the speed at which money circulates throughout the economy and interchanges hands. That's a benefit because it's implied higher liquidity, which means that there's a great deal of market acceptance for that asset, but it devalues the asset relative to the other things in the market because you have the concept of inflation is being produced by the exchange of debt notes, cash dollars. So the faster that you're exchanging dollars, the faster you're racking up your debt. So in essence, you're really creating a greater liability balance for yourself as you increase the speed at which the money changes. Because $1 in my hand is still only worth $1 in your hand. We didn't create $2 of business, right? But we have to create the taxation or the obligation of the Federal Reserve because of that exchange. So we did create future money. We created the inflation right there. And the faster we do that, the faster we create the obligation. So that is a part of the relationship. But the bigger elephant in the room is talking about the fact that the Federal Reserve essentially creates the tide. When we talk about a high tide rises all boats, or low one, wrecks ships and things like that, we're actually speaking to the true, like, when you consider all of the economic opportunity costs, all the arbitrage, all of the whales in the system, you're still going to be left with some level of relative equilibrium, minimal volatility. And as the Fed creates interest rate decisions and impacts the supply of the money in circulation, that has the most drastic effect. That's when Richard Hart talks about bond liquidity and you see Bitcoin goes down and everything else goes down. Well, there's still a reason that everything is going down and everything can go up, and that's directly impacted by the velocity controls and the supply controls of the decisions made by the Fed.
And crypto sloth or like I don't that thing that Richard Hart talks about, where the bonding of liquidity, right? Mm-hmm. In the traditional finance markets, it's kind of like when there's a black swan type of an event, mm-hmm. everything is correlated, even though they're like, hey, these things are decorrelated during good times, right? Like mm-hmm. the returns on bonds versus the returns on equity, right? Or small cap or something like that. You're like, these are decorrelated during a bullish time. During black swan events, everything's fucking correlated, including mm-hmm. like crypto. How does that bonding of the liquidity work, like during, and you guys have been in this longer than I have, mm-hmm. like during, go ahead.
We, for the entire existence of crypto as we've known it, and this is why I called it like the free trial of DeFi, or like the free trial of crypto was what Ethereum has gotten us up to, is because we don't have insulated value. Crypto is not being exchanged in crypto terms. We're still ultimately weighing everything in the unit of account of the US dollar. We're paying all of our taxes in dollars, which is probably more important. So that's where decisions that are made at that top level, the Federal Reserve's level, will ultimately dictate the logical flow of cash and other assets in the marketplace. And so people, when they see indicators that there's going to be a constriction on the economic pie, they take their slice out and they preserve their slice. That's their store of value, right? And so if there's opportunity for the bakery to actually have more business and times are good and booming, they will start to lay out more pie platters, and they will allow everybody to participate in baking more pies, but they will always be the ones that pull their slice out, and it will be a slice that you will feel. You will notice that slice is
do you see that happening, like the reduction of, because you're almost like in a way of like a pulling liquidity off the table, right? In a sense, right? Exactly. So, but how do you, when you think of like two worlds? So we got this giant fight going on between like the real world crypto and like the fake world. I mean, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
no, I hear you with kind of the technocracy and mm-hmm. corporatocracies and things like that.
Because the liquidity, because you're going to have like in the USD fiat world, you're going to have, I mean, there's going to be people like me, and there's going to be a fucking million other me around the world, or something similar to us, right, that are going to take fiat and they're going to leverage this garbage and they're going to put it into something that's going to go.
That's the osmosis, baby. That's why I think that's why I say that your strategy is a no-brainer, is because I think that's what the best money does. Is it utilizes every utility of worse money to do alchemy and become better money.
No, go ahead, crypto.
No, it's just a joke. It's like, and we're not doing alchemy to get gold. It's just...
Yeah, right. That's how we kind of got in this situation, unfortunately. So it's like, if you can do that, if you can teach yourself alchemy, then you can put yourself in an elevated position. And that's why I take such a social obligation, and I call it like the human obligation of crypto and blockchain and DeFi is to spread the word and to tell other people about it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see, because I've seen this comment come up, I think a couple on the stream with GRC and other things where people talk about a fiat like on-ramp and off-ramp. Whoa, Bullish just gave a super chat. What's up?
Hey.
Nice. Dude, that's so dope.
Nice.
Pushing me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Hell yeah. So I completely forgot what I was saying because I got distracted by that.
Off ramps?
Yeah, what word is it?
On ramps, off ramps?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so on ramps, off ramps. Thank you. So we have right now on ramps and off ramps. But what happens, like, I don't see that as being like a long-term issue, personally. Like, I see a lot of dialogue happening now, but we're going to enter into a world where, whether it's 12 months or 36 months or 65 months, like, where it's 99% crypto and there's a small amount in fiat. Maybe it takes 12 years. I don't know how long it's going to take, but there's going to be such a crazy amount of adoption that, like, the fiat on-ramp and off-ramp is going to, the only reason that matters today is because we are in the minority. And in the future, we're not going to be in the minority. We are going to be part of the majority of, like, people in crypto. If I want to do business with you guys, cool. You guys do business in crypto. So it's just like, okay, cool. Let me send you this shit, right? And I don't see that being an off-ramp as a on-ramp, off-ramp being a problem for, like, I mean, maybe a relatively short period of time, but
we should clarify. The only people that are concerned with the idea of having on-ramp, off-ramp, unless they're truly altruists, they're just talking about the convenience of onboarding, and even then, that's not crypto, that's centralized. They just want their bags pumped. They just want as many people with as much money as possible to flow in right now and pump their bags. So, like, I get that, but there's also something to be said about, one, it's like a non-issue. The volume will be there. The economic mass is already there, over $1 billion sacrificed, so, like, people are going to take their slice of that pie. I think that the difference between, like, where we are in the world today with the traditional banking system and crypto and the future that I think we all probably are looking forward to, which is the majority of people are taking the power back and it's crypto oriented and crypto centric. I think that membrane is the fog of lack of regulation and lack of public representatives that understand what the hell is going on. And so that the danger is just, like, the thickness of that membrane is determined by how we're able to convince a dialogue with the powers that be to have an understanding of how to create a better future with it, as opposed to how can they just tap their virus that has ruined fiat in the form of some CBDC that they're able to peg and bond in crypto markets. Obviously, the censorship resistance quality of crypto, we can fork things, but if you think it's hard to onboard people to the first blockchain, imagine having your momentum cut off before it even really reaches critical mass, and then you have to go and spin it into a more censored, harder to find secondary network to replicate the previous system state. Like, that's not a good growth roadmap. So you want to get in the dialogue with the current establishment, with the current things. Biden either today or recently just appointed a new supervisor to the Fed who's
XRP guy, right?
Right.
XRP,
pretty private business, pro-private business with regard to settling the regulations out of the jump with crypto. So Janet Yellen has recently started saying more positive things about it as well. I don't look at, like, the government necessarily as trying to ruin it. I just don't like how much they've ruined. They've ruined so many things that it's like I still hold that into account.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and my perspective on the off-ramp thing kind of falls more into the ease of onboarding thing, as well as just my personal ability to extract value into my day-to-day life, because I still need the fiat value to do my transactions right here, right now. And I really hate that I have to rely essentially on Ethereum going to ETH to get it onto, like, a Coinbase or something to be able to get dollars back into my bank account when I do decide to take profits one day in the future. And, like, once we get an off ramp where I can directly just take even if it's just Pulse straight to fiat easily, in my mind, it's game over. Like, at that point, like, I don't need to rely on anything else. I'm completely, my Pulsechain becomes my home base, and it becomes the place where I can branch out to other places. And it just makes it that much more of sturdy home base once I get that off ramp where I know I can easily go from fiat to crypto when my particular situation calls for it.
So right now, so if you got if you've got crypto and you need to like utilize it for whatever reason to use it in fiat, you're bringing it back to like Coinbase and then to your account, like that roundabout way of doing it. So you mean like just being able to go straight from your bank account to crypto type thing?
Yeah.
Or it's just an easier way instead of going from like that fucking
instead of going from whatever coin that I have and hoping that some exchange has the coin that I currently have. If they don't, I got to switch it over to ETH or USDC, send it to Coinbase, swap it to USD, and then my bank account's attached to my Coinbase account, and then I get it in my Coinbase in my bank account. And so with a centralized exchange that either has Pulse or is a Pulse-centric centralized exchange, I can just take all my ERC20s, move them over to PRC20s, not even have to deal with Ethereum. If I need value in the real world, swap it to Pulse and then get it into my bank account, which in my mind is just, there's so many less obstacles and the friction in moving all my money, especially considering gas fees on Ethereum. It's just, it's just so much easier in a way that it feels like a brush of fresh air when I think about it.
Have you somebody just mentioned Jason Ruby, thanks for that. And have you guys thought about using like a Coinbase credit card to make that easier? Or like any type of crypto card?
I saw the Gemini card, and the fact you can get like, what is it, 3% in crypto immediately? Like, that sounds fine to me, just because, that cash back usually in the credit cards I'm using now pretty much goes to crypto anyway. So it would be one less step.
Oh, GRC, what's up? Let's see if I can highlight this.
Oh, nice.
Hell yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool,
I want to ask you guys both about the digital dollar, but before like that, how when you look at the HSI for Hedron, right? Because what I'm thinking about, okay, so I can, and I'm just fleshing this out as I'm talking to you guys. So I can take fiat, leverage fiat into crypto, but if I go through an HSI, then I could leverage the future. And remember, like, I don't want anybody to fucking think that they should do it. That nobody should do any of the things that I'm talking about like in this video. But at what point is it like, because when I was running numbers with Hedron, it seems like so trivial because it's like 1,000 of it's such a small amount. Have you run those numbers, Cripple? At like what point does it become like valuable?
Yeah,
I ran the numbers so low. Go ahead.
Yeah, at right now, unless you have like really, really large HSIs, it isn't feasible, I would say, to take advances out just because the dollar value of Hadron is so low. But that's actually one of the core speculations the Hadron community has been having. Like, at what percent of your initial dollar value that you're putting in, that hex stake, do people start getting incentivized to take out their loans, to take out the advances? Is it 20%, 10%, 30%? Like, what is that threshold where people, it's like, okay, now is the time to take advances out because the value that I can extract for that is worth bringing it somewhere else to earn money. And actually, fundamentally, when you think about the value proposition of Hadron, that's the initial domino that rolls, that triggers the cause and effect, the cause and effect thing that gives Hadron its value, because the value of Hadron is in the liquidation markets where you can exchange it for hex stakes. So you don't get that until people start taking advances. So we need that initial domino to fall first. And it's just going to take time because we're still in the launch phase bonus where everybody's getting bonuses on their Hadron. People are still learning about it. And, you could say the hex community as a whole needs to expand a little bit because it's a niche within already a niche part of crypto in general. For me, like 20% sounds pretty good. Once I can start getting at least $1,000 out, I'd say, like dollar value in advances, that's when it becomes a little more feasible to start like LPing with the money. Because the APRs are so high.
What do you mean by that? So like, say you're putting in, say, 20 grand into an HSI. Because you're gonna, if you're doing that, you're also introducing a new risk to it, where like you are like taking a shitty thing in terms of fiat. It's gonna be worth less. Like you just look at 90 years of history, that shit's going down, and putting it into something where there's a high probability that it's going to be going up into the future. So if you take something that is already that you would believe that there's a high probability it's going to go up in the future, and you use that, then you're introducing the risk of, say you take 20%, 30% of that, right? Or you schedule it out so that, like you were saying about like paying off the first, you take the advance and you pay off half of it, 2/3 of it, whatever you're comfortable with from a risk standpoint. So you get that margin, and you'd have to put it into something where you believe it's going to have to have a higher return than Hedron if Hedron goes up. Something like Hex maybe, right? Because I think that they're going to be very closely correlated because they're obviously linked to each other, but like one has a yield on it. So if you took that yield off the 20% and you put it into Hex, then put it at the end of that stake. Is that what you're thinking? So say if it was, run numbers here. So say if it's like a 5-year, $20,000 HSI stake. So you pull your advance, you take, say, 30% off the top, and you put the rest back in there. So you have 30% at the tail end of your Hedron that's supposed to be paid. You take that dollar amount and you put that into Hex to stake that so that it comes due when does this make sense?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I was just going to say, thank you. So I was just going to say, I totally agree with that logic, and like those strategies will work at some point in the future if the migration from fiat to crypto as the majority movement like has enough that it's not like a flip. If it's like a real migration, then that'll definitely exist. If it's a quick flip, then it'll exist, but you won't be thinking in USD terms anymore, so it's a moot point. But in the immediate term, like in the circumstances that we're dealing with right now, I think we both identify like clearly the value of each Hedron is insignificant or negligible for what this arbitrage opportunity requires. I think that by the time that you do kind of reach a value of Hedron being able to produce that loan, you're already going to have alternatives within crypto that can represent dollar loans if you want, to the point where you probably wouldn't even want to take fiat's money just because of the manipulation inherent in the market with regard to like geopolitical events that maybe you don't really have a say in. You might want to just, even if you're operating on something pegged to a fiat dollar, you might still want it to be in ways of crypto asset just to keep yourself insulated from their supply games.
Yeah, can you rephrase the question really quick so I understand better?
So if you have $20,000 fiat and you take that and you put it into an HSI stake, and then you take your advance, which I don't know what the actual dollar amount would be, but it would probably be something relatively insignificant or relatively small. Now, you put back about 60 or 70% of that in terms of like paying it in advance, like what you had mentioned earlier. So there's like 30% that still needs to be paid back. And say it was like $1,000 that you had left, and you took that $1,000 and you staked it in Hex that came due in 4 years. Say it was that last year you needed to pay back for your advance, and you staked that in Hex to come due when you started to pay that back again. What are your thoughts on that? Or like, it just seems like I'd rather leverage more fiat.
I think that works. And it is a viable option. Where my head has been at is with this specific strategy is I actually want to iterate that advanced function as many times as possible, specifically when it comes to using that Hedron advance to buy liquidity LP tokens that I can stake to earn fees and the incentivization token for Pulsex. And the reason I want to do that is because, well, one, those LP tokens are liquid now. I have the option to move them to whatever opportunity I have, depending on where the market is. But not only that, I'm generating this asset over time where I can use the rewards to pay off the loan as fast as possible, to take another advance, to then do it again. So now I'm perpetually building a new position over time instead of having one static Hex stake that just ends at the end of that whatever 4 years or whenever the payment.
So like almost like opportunistically paying off the Hedron. So there's a 30% drop in Hedron, but you're earning yield here that you have access to with the LP. So you take that and pay your shit off.
I want to pay that as fast as possible because that just means I can hit the advance function again and do it again. It's like this infinite loop, and then the endpoint of that debt loop essentially is the generation of an income generating asset. If that makes sense.
In terms of like now you have hex kind of thing.
Now you have hex. Now you have liquidity pool tokens.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like say, like you take the advance and you take half that hedron, sell it to Pulse. Sorry, what'd you say?
That's like, well, it's better than a dividend. It's not like you have to earn it every 3 months. Like you can mint it daily if that was your thing, or the loan protocol all at once.
Exactly. But like you take the advance, pay off half of it, and then with that extra half, you sell half of it for Pulse, throw that in the Hadron Pulse pool, and then you got money coming out liquid literally every second. And then you can actually calculate it. And this is something I've done, and I can actually share my spreadsheet with you guys if you want. But you can calculate exactly how long it's going to take with the current prices and the current APRs to make a 30-day payment over time. And then you can calculate how long it would take to pay off the entire loan.
Beautiful.
Have you guys thought about, so Pulsex, Pulsechain, right? So when I took a look, and I'm clearly biased because I missed out on Pulse and I sacrificed for Pulsex. So when I look at the numbers on these, you have two different fee structures, right? And you're like, okay, well, there's 25% burn over here, and then over here there's 21 or 22% buy-in burn over here. Mm-hmm. And one is a fixed absolute number, Pulse, right? You have a fraction of a penny per transaction. And then on Pulsex, you have a percentage of the dollar value, which makes shit fucking different. Real different when you run the numbers. So when you look at the magnitude of these, so if you have $1 billion or $500,000 of value exchanging hands, right? You have two pairs. You have say Pulsex and Pulse, or Pulse and Hex, or Pulse and EX, or something. You would assume that there's going to be more LPs of Pulse with another token, whether it's liquid loans or something else is happening, then there is going to be with Pulsex and pairs. So that means they're earning one of these two tokens as LP providers, right? When you get that as a percentage, right, because it's 0.29%, and then 22% of that goes to buy and burn. So if you earn fees, we just said that the majority, or not the majority, there a larger number of token pairs are going to be between Pulse and something. That means fees are going to be earned in Pulse, right?
Both that and everything's
correct.
Pulse, right?
But if you earn fees in Pulse, and then you have to buy and burn that, what does that mean? You got to sell fucking Pulse. So that means there's going to be downward pressure on Pulse, right? Which is going to have to be overcompensated by the demand and or the number of transactions on other.
So see, that's like a macro view of looking at it, but the more macro, the one step further is when Richard is talking about the velocity of money. That's that point right there. Is you're identifying that one of these things moves every time, and one of these things almost moves every time. It moves every time it's used, and its mechanisms are slightly different. This one actually, when it moves in its own little ecosystem, it does very well for its ecosystem because it's not designed to be the gas for every single thing that has to happen on the system. So there is something to be said about, while the value of Ethereum in US dollar terms is extremely expensive, some of that is tied into the inefficiency. Some of it is tied into the demand for these filling up blocks that are becoming incentivized through higher gas fees of bidders. They're essentially saying, we're willing to pay more rather than just stop using you altogether, and therefore the value of Ethereum and Bitcoin can go to whatever the hell they want. Pulsechain can go to whatever the hell it wants price-wise if the sentiment of the market decides that, but the market doesn't rip itself off either. So you're going to have to achieve that value, which will come through mass adoption. It'll come through maturity over years. So there is something to be said about not wanting Pulsechain to be as competitive against the US dollar as Pulsex necessarily, because of its utility as everyone needing it to participate in the first place.
Crypto Sloth, go ahead. I'm going to try to find the spreadsheet and see if I can pull it up and show you guys the numbers what you're talking about.
For sure. Yeah, I'd love to see them.
I think that makes sense. The logic of the buy and burn, and since Pulse will be part of the fees will be paid in Pulse, and if that's being sold to buy Pulsex, then that does appear to be negative. That does appear to be native sell pressure on PLS to pump PLSX, to pump Pulsex. Yeah, it may not be the most ideal, but also I don't see it as being that huge of a problem, especially because it is the native asset on the chain, and people need to buy it. People like to speculate on L1s.
100%.
Yeah, I think,
and some businesses require them, right? I mean, if you're going to develop something, you may need to go buy yourself a big old bag of liquidity in the gas token. And then there's also the aspect of Pulsex has the voting for the DAO, which is unique that the Pulsechain doesn't give you, but then Pulsechain gives you the delegation to validators. So there are arguments that are just everyone can win if they want to pick one horse, but it's going to depend on different timelines and on different unpredictable market behaviors as far as how quickly do these buy and burn mechanisms really crank on the heat and things like that versus is all of the action actually just establishing L1 communities from the dev standpoint. So there's not a ton of swapping. There's actually just a ton of gas purchases and tests and things like that being operated. So I think that I just think that it's very nuanced and it comes down to a lot of the time frames.
100%. I think obviously there's a ton of nuances as you take a look at this, like at points like Pulsex, but there's so many different nuances in terms of like, if you look at if you think about elasticity, right? Like the elasticity of demand, or you can think about the elasticity of adoption of crypto in the sense that if you have something that's generally speaking on average maybe $20 to do a transaction and now it's a fraction of a penny, like what do you think say if it went down by, a tenfold decrease, you don't just have a tenfold increase in demand, you have a bigger, generally speaking, right? Tesla goes from $120,000 a car down to $60,000 a car. They don't just have a doubling, even though they drop it.
Right?
Correct. Exactly. More than a 2x because of how that's structured. So here, if there's like a $10,000 example here, the fee here is a tenth of a penny. It might be a penny. I don't know what the number is going to be. It might be less than this, right? On the Pulse side, it's going to be a tenth of a penny. Over here, it's going to be $29 because it's a percentage. So you're going to have $29 or $6 burned versus 25% of the transaction fee, which comes out to be 0.0003 cents. So like when you look at these two numbers, $6 divided by, it's like a 24,000x difference in the magnitude that's going to be happening between these two. Like, I mean, think about how many transactions have to happen between, say, liquid loans and Pulse, that DAO, the Maximus DAO, like any project. There has to be a fuckload of other projects to generate additional Pulse fees to compensate just for this one piece, it seems like. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
I think you're nailing it, man. Personally. It was the only time I've ever said that a DEX was going to outperform an L1 in any time frame. Now,
could the
launch was simultaneous, but
do you think this has because what you said, like L1s have always, or somebody said this the other day, like L1s have always outperformed anything on top of them. Could this be that first time?
For the most part.
Right? What do you think?
It could be. I think it could be. I think the buy and burn is really powerful.
Yeah, and if it isn't, then Pulse needs an immediate improvement, not immediate, but when this comes to be, because what you're implying then is the price of the gas fee is outrunning the value of speculative assets built on top of that payment network. You don't want that. That's inflation. That's like true depreciation of everything else. So it's just interesting dynamics. Like everyone should be happy that Pulsechain isn't designed to pump immediately. But when you're talking about fractions of pennies to a penny and the relative expensive of 1 penny per transaction versus the 10,000x to get there, those are really, or the 1,000x to get there, those are different concepts where you can say, well, I still made a ton of money on that and it's not like hurting the network at all. It's still a useful thing. So Ethereum doesn't give you that. Bitcoin doesn't give you that.
And I think also just general portfolio allocation principles kind of ties into play here, because now we're talking about two assets that everybody wants, but it's like, oh, one seems to really outperform the other. How do I allocate my money? Do I throw everything in the Pulsex now because of it? And you could just kind of see Pulse as like the baseline amount that it goes up, and then like because of that force multiplier that Pulsex has, you know, you may allocate more money to it, but you still want your bag of Pulse just kind of sitting there to get the baseline price appreciation of the entire chain, if that makes sense.
It could almost be like because you could see maybe possible future scenario where the Pulse, we won't see this right away, but Pulse could be the blue chip, like the stable thing, right? When you talk about crypto, it's so asinine to say something like that, but Pulse could be the thing with lower volatility, right? In the long run.
I would suspect, or I would hope, that given the number of decimal places associated with the transaction fee in Pulse terms, so how inexpensive Pulse fees are in Pulse terms, coupled with the initial, assuming here, low fiat price per Pulse coin, when you consider that, so like one Pulse coin can do a ton of transactions, and one Pulse coin costs way less than $1. So because of that relationship of scale, how extremely different the values are, I would hope that when you look at other price charts and you see the big boom and busts and the volatility there, I would hope that this offers so much immediate competition that the true value is much harder to speculate some great level above a true intrinsic value of the amount of economic power that's been put into it. Because you have so many opportunities to, rather than just hold Pulse, you can put it anywhere else. So, but then in order to do anything, you need Pulse. So you understand that there's a need for it, there's a scarcity of it, but there's a huge utility for it. And so that's definitely an appreciating force. So I expect the chart to increase over time. But I think because of all the alternative options that are designed to pump, you would expect the sell pressure to be respectful on Pulse in terms of nobody should be overextended and just holding Pulse, because the opportunity cost of the yield that you could expect to earn elsewhere wouldn't make sense. So I think that you could see a less, like you're saying, less volatile, but I still think great gains.
Oh no, completely agree. I definitely think there's going to be massive gains. But that's a good point though, because that's an opportunity cost. And if you're thinking about Pulse and you're like, okay, I'm going to hold my bag in Pulse, but then you're like, wait, you were talking about the LP providing crypto slot. Like I could provide, LP and earn 40%, 60%, 120%, depending on how you're like doing your shit, right? Like that could be pretty compelling to like maybe sell a little bit of it or transfer into something else or whatever. Go ahead.
And I think that exact dilemma is actually something I faced personally myself on the Phantom network, where actually my coin Phantom that I hold is a very small allocation of my total position, because I'm like, if I'm just sitting there in liquid Phantom, I'm like, but I can just sell half of it into Boo, and then I'm already earning yield on it right there. Automatically, and it naturally pulls the native asset out of my wallet to go do something with it, which I think that was kind of what you were getting at a second ago, right, Orca?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's it. That to me is, I think it's really a positive thing at the end of the day, because people, the general kind of like atmosphere that I hear on the internet with crypto, it's definitely more about the speculation and the price appreciation versus fiat than it is about the cypherpunk movement. Now, there's obviously a large movement in the crypto community that's passionate about that. But for the average person, like when Sam was saying, someone that just picks up the internet today, dude, they're going to get sidewinded by scams and stuff like that because just naivety. And so I think a lot of that is going to be the case when it comes to how the assets perform. I mean, where's the majority of speculation going to go? On assets that look like speculative assets. They're not going to go to things that are stable. That's not their job. And they're not going to go to extremely low-cost fees that aren't designed to pump as fast as some of the other fee-based services within the system. So I think that it's sort of a healthy thing. It helps people have time. Ethereum didn't take very long if you want to be an Ethereum whale, your time was gone way before the gas fees got out of hand. But in Pulsechain, there might be economic incentives that say, look, I really want the voting power of the DAO of Pulsex, which might have greater implications for the performance of most of the transactions on this network anyway. And maybe you view layer ones as primarily being transaction networks. And then you say, but I understand that the long-term value of Pulsechain might outperform on some really long time horizon. Obviously, people with these dilemmas are going to be diversified.
Do you think that there could be a way to design a protocol that was like the department store for staking, so to speak, where instead of right, because you think of it, it's like try to explain this to your mom or like your brother or like some fucker that doesn't have any clue about crypto, and they're like they don't even want to try because it's like so like backwards from like the way that they've been taught to learn things. But if you were like, hey, you want to generate income with your crypto, go to this store here, which is like crypto protocol, whatever, and you go into that store and there's like a plethora of different options to just pick from yields. Hey, you want to do like yield farming here, or you want to or stake it with this thing, or stake it with that thing, or whatever the case is, and that's how people access that.
Yeah, I think that's probably where we're headed now. I think that's like the next chapter is better user interfaces. I'm seeing some stuff on other chains where some service providers are trying to create sort of like a HUD that has a bunch of different dApps, kind of all one-stop shop where you could go and interact. And I think some products will lend themselves, like Hex and maybe utilizing HSI, Hedron, lends itself to like, hey, I'm going to the Hex store today because I understand this concept of I'm going to go buy yield, and I don't want to jump through the DeFi hoops to do it, but I want the DeFi product on the other side of that. Obviously, that sounds like some counterparty risk involved. You could probably operate when you start talking about tokenized stakes, though. You can get really creative. So I think we're just in that Genesis movement.
And there are some technologies being built now that will kind of facilitate that. I don't know if you guys have heard of like Layer 0 and Stargate at all. But Layer 0 is essentially an interoperability protocol. And Stargate is an application built on top of it, where essentially it creates this like layer of liquidity of all the native assets under all of the layer ones, and it'll allow you to go straight from like Phantom to ETH or like ETH to Pulsechain automatically without having to go through a bridge, because the liquidity is bonded within the way
within like
their program is built.
Such a way.
You no longer have to go through wrapped assets. You can just do native to native asset. And not only that, but what you're able to do, it's kind of like a plug and play thing where you plug your DEX into this protocol. And then now not only can you go from native asset to native asset in one click, you can also go from unstaking your liquidity pool positions and then restaking it on another chain in different assets, all essentially within one click. So I'm not explaining it perfectly well.
I'm picking it up, though. That's really cool. That's what the world needs.
Yep, it's really cool. I've looked into it a bit, and technically it's a little further ahead. I have to catch up a little bit education-wise to be able to explain it sufficiently. But like Layer 0 Stargate, just something to look into, and it's already been released and it's already been working.
Yeah, definitely want to research that.
You should use the word interoperability. So is that just being able to use it on multiple?
Yep, multiple. The ability to move from chain to chain seamlessly. And so that's kind of one of the big problems trying to be solved right now. That's the big reason for kind of use case for Polkadot and Kusama through Gavin Wood. He's trying to essentially create the highways between different systems through like a parachain, through their parachains. But I think Layer 0 specifically and Stargate, they've really addressed this in a pretty cool way.
How I made comment, you said Stargate runs on Cosmos, and I could have sworn, I was like, man, it sounds so similar to some of like what Luna is working on with interoperability. So that's really cool. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I hadn't heard of the Stargate Layer 0, so I'm going to Google that a little bit.
Yeah, that's fascinating. CryptoSloth, I know you had mentioned you have to go soon, so I want to ask you a question before you go. So
please.
if you have $5,000 right now, and assuming Pulse was open and Pulsex was open and Hex, how would you utilize your capital of $5,000? Where would you put it and why?
$5,000. Okay, let me think. $1,000 I would take and I'd punt it out 15 years in an HSI stake, so you have that decentralized line of credit. $2,000 I would probably take and just buy Hex right now, liquid. keep it liquid for the fork. So then you have that option to trade pre-bridge or even post-bridge, and you have the assets to be able to liquidity provide. I take another 500, and then I would buy Hadron with it as a safety measure for future loans that you're taking against your HSI.
At a cheap price, a good idea.
Yep. I would not get Maxi right now if you only had $5,000 because you'll be able to buy that later off the market. And then I would take, let's see, how much do I have left? 1,500. I would actually take that 1,500 and I take it to DeFi Kingdoms right now, and I would be earning the APY there to get some more liquid assets to be ready for Pulsechain. Because right now on DeFi Kingdoms, they just had an expansion, and the APRs are about 1,500% on a pool, 1,500% on a asset pool that experiences almost no impermanent loss. And then as well as 300% on another set.
He's gonna leave. He's gonna talk about this 1,500. You could have dropped this 1,500 gem like 20 minutes ago.
Hey Sam, I just came over to buy you for the $5,000. I'm just waiting on Paul to send me a message real quick.
I'll hit you guys up. And hey, Dollar Cross Crypto, he has talked about this opportunity a lot on his channel. So go on there and you'll get all the details. But I'll blast the links. I'll blast the links to you guys on the Twitter DM.
Where can people get a hold of you? Go ahead, like Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff.
Yep. So YouTube, I'm just Crypto Sloth. You'll find me in the. I think I have it. Let me see. Hold on one second.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that avatar right there. That's me. And then on Twitter, I'm Sloth Crypto 3. Yeah. That's where you'll find me on Twitter. I'm not. Yeah, why not? I just had to find a name that works. But yeah, that's what it is now, Orca. Thanks, I appreciate it. 3-toed Sloth. What I do pretty much on my YouTube channel is I make slide decks and I just present on whatever's interesting to me at the time. Whatever opportunities I like. It's pretty much just an outlet for me to channel my thoughts in a productive and kind of polished way. And I essentially do it. I used to make pre-recorded content. Now I'm just going to do streams, like kind of like a lecture format. I hop on, go through my slide deck, and just have casual conversations with the chat. And then I'm hoping to bring some other people on in the future just to kind of hang out. But yeah, that's me. And I haven't been streaming in a while. But in about a week, I'm going to be starting up again.
Hey, I know you're in school. When you go through and you do your next presentation and you're really deep and you get that grasp of everything, let me know when you do that presentation and come on here if you want to, and we'll talk more in depth about that, because I find when somebody's like really, really deep into something, that's the best time to talk to them, because they're just like, that's like you're diving in deep and they've already dove in deep, and it's like a good time to like collaborate on something. Yeah, it's a good time.
Before I head off, you want me to? I'll share a little bit of a sneak peek of what's coming in the future on my channel as a thank you for bringing me on. If you want. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Of course.
Let's see. Let's go to share.
Well, this will be good because then I can learn how to use the back end and how to like.
This is what I've been doing to procrastinate on my finals, and the most productive things come when you're have to do something else.
We didn't Crypto Sloth. We didn't talk about like what if you decided to do an MBA that gave you like.
I get you guys. Yeah. Sorry, you cut out there for a second. Hello.
I can hear you. Can you hear?
What if I decide to do what?
I was like, what if you decided to get a master's and you just took the money for the master's and you just put it into crypto? No, just saying. I'm not saying you should do that, but
one of us already has, man.
I'm in. I'll share. I'm in dental school right now. That's what I'm doing. So I already have the loans coming in. I won't say what I'm doing with them, but I have. Okay, hold on. I gotta figure something out to share my screen, and then I'll share it with you guys in a second. Okay, I'll come back on.
Cool. I guess you shouldn't publicize that, right? That's technically not in there.
Well, Orca. So, by the way, appreciate that. Also, and if you were like, hey man, at whatever time you gotta go, just be like, yo, Sam, I got a fucking piece. Like,
let me know. Sure.
Okay, cool. So, digital dollar, right? Yeah. The digital yuan is already out there. They started, I think, in 2016 working on this like fake cryptocurrency. And now the U.S. is going to come out with their own fake cryptocurrency. Like what do you, there's going to be so many people that are fucking wrecked with that.
That's where I think, so that's why DeFi is probably as hot as it is right now, is because enough people are getting serious about, if we don't move, like if people don't get their stuff together a little bit and start putting the finance into DeFi, then what you're going to risk is running into a world where there's some programmable government stable money and it can somehow directly impact the value of your cryptocurrency with regard to the marketplace that you live in. Whether that's only at the tax level or not, that's probably already introducing more doomsday than I foresee coming. Yeah,
it's going to be, that's going to be, because you had mentioned the velocity at which adoption happens, right?
Right, yeah.
If it's more gradual, or if it's like this giant step up and then gradual, or like several steps up, like one step up and another one, as countries continue to like do that. But like that can be like what's happening with NFTs, right? Because NFTs is positive for this ecosystem related to Hex, Pulse, and Pulsex, right? It's positive just because more people are learning about crypto, and then they realize that like, wow, this stupid piece of art is ridiculous. Like, why am I putting my money here? I'm just wasting it, right? Yeah. And then they can go into something that has more, and I'm sure that there's plenty of other projects out there that I'm just completely oblivious to.
Right, dude, that's why it's so important. That's why I recently took the Hex out of the name, was just, there's so much information, man. And as much as I try to stay on top of all of it, dude, I'm learning new things in crypto every day that I'm just like, oh my God, that's a whole other chapter that I have to go and figure out. So it's important that we just be open-minded enough to talk about all these different projects. And like, even if you think that everyone knows about it, just like bring it up casually, because maybe we have no idea that it's a thing and it can be really useful.
Have you, so I missed my thing cut out when you were talking about it. So you took your MBA money and put that into crypto, so to speak, kind of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did a couple of things with it, like the loan money, and then as well as the 401k, I leveraged in different ways. Neither of which would have been necessary, but it was just the idea of like the logic behind why I was making the decision was I foresaw a less valuable dollar in the future. I didn't foresee my salary being, I could have negotiated definitely for fair, but my fair and their fair would have just been too wide apart in this scenario. So I said, no, I'm willing to look at staking as well as some liquid, as well as some liquidity providing and things like that, just so that there's cash flow and there's outrunning. So whatever I'm trying to hold on to, whatever nut I need to just fulfill the loan, I have that easily accruing yield to the time.
So you took, you kind of did the same idea as what I was describing at the beginning. It sounds like. And so yeah. How did you plan for the reserve? Or were you like, well, I can float this because I'm working and earning fiat? Or like, how did you think about that?
Right.
Or are you LPing?
Yeah, I mean, I had to sharpen the pencil a little bit there. Luckily, I'm fortunate enough where like the money wasn't, I could put up the money in different ways, and I chose to go with this route because based on so I still have a 401k. I've had multiple 401ks, but the one I liquidated, I had enough there. If I wanted to, just in cash terms, the loan could just be paid in cash. So it's like I don't have to speculate at all if I don't want to. I could pay it all off in cash and then just use like the time I'm in school to speculate and just try to outrun what I would have done, I guess, just earning a salary. So I just really diversified into a couple of things, but I really leveraged Hex, most of which I got for free. So that's like why it's so amazing is it's like, well, this is already doing incredible for me. And just to get an extra year or 2 years, or even push it like 2.5 years to not have to like liquidate anything and just continue to earn yield as well, it's just a no-brainer. And it's like I'm openly advocating and saying like this is financial advice. I've been telling people left and right like, no, you should just go take on a shitload of debt right now and put it in crypto.
Right, because it's going to be going down in value.
I tell them all the time, man. I don't care. Everyone has to make their own life decisions. So if we're always just saying like you need to have the shield from Captain America chiseled with your seed phrases in Arabic so that nobody can ever steal it, it's like, dude, I'm going to be the only one voicing like take some risks in life then, because I know what the alternative is. If things get really ugly, we can see it in countries that have been treated miserably by their dictatorships and totalitarianism. So it's like, yeah, I'd rather you take some risks in life.
Well, it's even more risky to not take risk than to take risk. Like you gotta have some percentage of your value like out there trying to get your bag. Like you shouldn't be like 100% safe, no volatility, completely. What's the word I'm looking for? Preserving your wealth 100%. Yeah, it's almost like the saying, it's more risky not to be in crypto than to be in crypto now, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But all right, I think I got my thing up. If you want to share,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think you have to.
I'm sorry, I didn't see it. There it goes. Yes.
Yeah,
hey, man, we're learning out here, man.
All right, so this is the risk to reward calculator I made for HSI advances. So here you can kind of put in all the variables, whatever the Hadron price is. I like to dream.
What I'm saying here is that I need to update my presentation skills.
Dude, it took me so much longer to get color schemes on here. I'm so bad at design, but I finally got something that at least isn't horrible on the eyes. But
looks great.
Yeah,
it looks awesome.
So you put in your HSI kind of parameters in here, whatever the price is, the global hex APY, your days advanceable, and the B shares. And then this part right here will calculate everything else that you need to do. So like how much Hadron, principal and interest that you'll be paying. And then you add those together and you get the total payment you'll need to make every 30 days in terms of Hadron. Then you'll get it in the dollar value. And then you get the dollar value of your advance at the time that you borrow. And so this is all the information you need to know in terms of just kind of raw numbers. And then here, let's go, whatever opportunity you want to yield farm on. That's just personally what I'm geared towards. So even like, Spooky Swap, and then like DeFi, whatever it is. And then you just input the APYs that are in there. And then this chart right here will calculate if the LP is at the same price, and then the Hadron's at the current price.
On this one here, I don't know if it's the same way for Orca, but the white is a little bit like,
you can't see it too much.
Yeah,
we can see it, but it's just a little bit.
Looking at Excels, but it is a little probably black through. Although your red cells probably look better with white text. That's like the trade.
Yeah, let me
the green and white where it's just a smidge like that's way better.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Sorry.
So basically what this calculates here from all those input numbers previously is how many days it would take to pay off that loan given these certain variables right here. Mm-hmm. So if the LP price stays the same and the current price stays the same of the Hadron, and you're earning 10% on whatever Pulsex thing you're yielding on, you'll be able to make a payment every 21 days. And then it also calculates, if your LP is up 5% and Hadron is up 10%, you'll see that it takes 41 days. And then as you kind of adjust these numbers, it'll automatically change the colors to let's say it goes to 5%. And then, red is like you're not going to be able to make a payment. Orange is you'll be able to make, yellow, you'll be able to make a payment before the 90-day liquidation period. And then green is you'll be able to make every payment. And so now you can kind of see before you take that advance and before you decide which asset you want to put your advanced Hadron into, exactly if the risk to reward lines up across multiple different scenarios. If the LP goes up, if it goes down, and then measure that against Hadron goes down and Hadron goes up.
How could I? So this is awesome. First of all, this is freaking great. This is like a Monte Carlo simulation to a certain degree. Like, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. So utilizing something like this. So as I was like kind of fleshing it out with you guys about, taking your leveraged fiat into crypto, and then you could go the Hedron way and then leverage crypto. I think for me, it seems like leveraging fiat is just like a no-brainer idea. We're leveraging crypto. Yes, I love this, but how could I utilize this framework because like maybe I take a portion of the $100,000 and I put it into LP to like, okay, maybe I can put it out for 6 months, and then in 6 months I have to earn enough to be able to generate the payments on there or something like that. That's what I'm thinking. But sorry, go ahead. I just want was running through my
No,
head. I got excited.
no, that's great. This is just essentially like when I thought about what numbers do I need to see to be able to know if my advance is worth it, and seeing in terms.
Might have lost him a little bit.
The audio cut out a little bit. What do you think of this work? This is fucking awesome.
I love it, man. This is the kind of tools. So just until we get him back, like I'm working on a website now, and because I want to integrate with social media platforms I don't typically use for like the stuff that I do with like crypto, so Facebook and things like that. I'm putting together crypto curricula, and I want to put together essentially a curriculum for everyone from kindergarten level up to as elite as you want to get into understanding crypto, so that people can utilize tools like this, like a one-stop shop where there will be financial education tools and templates and things like that, so that you can. No one's going to hold your hand in crypto, right? The customer service isn't there, so providing some level of.
Am I back?
Outreach.
Yes.
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay, sorry about that.
Very
But yeah, that's what one of my next streams is going to be. I'm just going to break that down, and then I'll share the link so everybody has that, so we can all kind of make informed decisions and proper risk management calculations when we're taking out this debt. Because and this is something else I'm going to talk about, but we also want to be able to do this to be able to extract value from other ecosystems and bring it into ours, especially Hex. You know, if something's a store of value, kind of implicitly you're saying it's vampiric, in that you're going to be taking money from other places and you're going to be putting it there. So I think as a responsibility that we have as Hexicans is to learn how to generate income in as many ways as possible and at diverse assets as possible, to bring it back to Hex, to pump our bags and to make our store of value the supreme store of value that we know it is. Right. And this is just one step in that process.
I fucking love it.
And
that's all.
But no, Crypto Sloth, I don't mean to cut you off, brother. I'm sorry.
No worries. I'm just saying that's all I wanted to share. Watch out for that in the stream next time. I gotta go ingest some flashcards. It's been an absolute pleasure, Sam. Thank you for having me on. Orca, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm sure we'll all get to talk later, flex later. Yeah.
Yes. When you do that, let's do another one. When you put that out, let's do another one.
Awesome.
And go through that.
And I'll be sure to subscribe, and I'll pump the videos, man. That's awesome content.
Thank you. And hey, Orca, watch. I'll send the DeFi Kingdoms link, and then Orca, I'm going to send you a special Telegram link for you to come hang out with some of us. Sounds good?
Cool.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Hey, see you later, brother. Thanks for coming on. Orca, what do you think about that? That is dope as fuck.
That's what we need, man. I'm getting goosebumps. So like that's what I'm working towards, is because I talked to I onboard so many people from legacy finance, and it's crazy how familiar they are with strategies, or at least terminology, and they can navigate. If they want to speculate, they kind of know where they need to go and what buttons they need to click to get exposure. But the leap to do that same behavior in crypto is universes away. It's just not even.
How do you even approach that problem, dude? Like you have, like, just like you have if you're trying to onboard somebody that's got $5,000 versus somebody who's got 5 million, it's two different stories you're telling, right? So how do you even approach the knowledge gap because you got a fucking gigantic gargantuan, like, what is that big canyon in Arizona? Like the Grand Canyon, like you have that size in terms of like knowledge gap. How do you go about approaching that?
I always try to start with, you got to be able to have, so not everyone's going to make a good teacher and good advocate. So maybe the best you can do is cheerlead, and that's still helpful too. Like get some good morale around the project. But if you're going to take on the responsibility of trying to help educate people and close that gap for them, you got to meet them where they are at. And that's why, I try to get as familiar with their understanding of money as possible. I'm not trying to get in their pockets or in their bags. I'm just trying to understand what they think the relationship is. And then I introduce the concept of, you have to talk about the banking system and how central finance works. Because if you don't, all you're doing is going to a casino and speculating on crypto. And maybe you're getting really good tips, and you can do really well with really good tips in crypto, but you're not embracing why crypto works and what it's about. So I try to help people understand, and I really use the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. I talk about the freedom of speech. I talk about autonomy. I talk about the right that people have to their own property and to keeping their shit. And if you don't support everything that you see your tax money being paid toward, then there might be a reason to look for alternatives. And that's usually enough context for them to go, so you're telling me I'm kind of sticking it to the man, and it's still like the stock market in some way, but what you're telling me is money isn't manipulated by the government. It's like, yeah, sure. Vis-a-vis, you're now familiar with crypto enough that you're not going to just be immediately hands off or distant when somebody brings up a challenging concept. Like, hey, do you want to swap your US dollars into hex? It's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, and especially when there's 14 steps involved.
Right.
What are your thoughts on inflation in general, in terms of like how you see that over the next couple, several months, midterm, a year, 2 years, but also if inflation stays anywhere above 5%, I mean, I see that as bullish, right?
For crypto?
Who the fuck wants to for crypto? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of curious, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think inflation is going to be over the next 12 to 18 months? Feel free to talk it out loud, right? And then,
Sure.
and then how does that affect on crypto, in your opinion?
So I think, like in the immediate term, so we'll say like in the next 6 months, nothing is going to be significantly impacted. Anything that appears to be a significant, control is it's a fake out. It's like if you think that the release of 100 million gallons of oil is going to be enough to reduce the $4 per gallon, it's not. You're going to burn through that in 48 hours. The inflation for me is a little bit. Dude, it's weird because I've been trying to be more optimistic than I usually am. When it comes to the government, I'm usually like V for Vendetta, man. It's like these guys are the worst, and I just can't get along with them. But I'm trying so hard because I want to see a future that's symbiotic. I want the things that do work right now to work in the future and be better in the future. But I want the things that are broken right now to be addressed and taken care of and improved and fixed. I don't like starting the world over from scratch. So in my opinion, I think maybe this is like I'm trying to be pro Fiat argument here. I'm like in the Fed, I'm in the Treasury. It's like I'm trying to make this work for everyone. The world has reached, and I'm going to use your favorite, Tesla as an example. The world has reached a new paradigm of innovation in which the economic valuation systems of the past fall magnitudes short of accurately forming cohesion to the modern values we experience relative to the time in which they came into existence. And so while we're spending astronomical amounts of money, that's actually the proper amount of money in the new world of innovative economics. We need this new supply. And so while in the immediate frictional term, you're going to feel that as rampant inflation, stagflation, recession even, it's actually setting the table for a more broad trust system as far as providing equity to major movers in the technosphere, people that are going after the $1 trillion elephant in the room that is space exploration, people that are improving whatever this, Web3 forming into the Web2 world, whatever that's going to look like. So that's my argument. That's like my one, maybe inflation's not as scary if you see it as like, well, we've just approached a new paradigm where the whole world needs so much more money that the amount that was in circulation simply doesn't make sense, and we're going about it this way. Is that what's happening right now?
Well, you also, because you have like very bad policies being put in place, and those, you said the thing with oil, right? So when you have bad policies put in place, you have the pressure on the price because they're limiting the supply of oil effectively through bad policy. Yep. And the same thing happens for many other markets, which drives up the price of these things by limiting supply in some fashion, or just printing money, right? And then your shit's just worth less, period. But on the other hand, when you look at the innovative side of things and bringing that to the forefront, you have downward pressure, right? So it's you got that seesaw of so many people are trying innovative ways of driving down. I want to say driving down costs, but I don't think that's an appropriate way to put it. I think more appropriate would be finding innovative ways to provide value, right? We might be more
like real value, right? Not just like consumerism, bunch of the same toy manufactured over and over and over, bunch of different flavors of cereal, but like this actually provides a step forward in the economy. So some kind of true value, which is that's dangerous to trust other people to be able to identify what's real value and what's not. But that's like the one argument I would make is maybe they're financing people that are really stepping up because we have technology now. We have telecommunications has reached a point where the world is so small. We don't have to live in feudal Japan and think that everything outside of the island is dragons and horrible. We have real means of saying like, hey, there's someone really, really smart in a place that doesn't have resources, but I can communicate to that person and we can get the resources to that person. And then it's like, what if Einstein would have never been discovered because he just didn't have enough to eat for a couple of days? And then Einstein.
But what you're touching on is outside of crypto in the one sense, but it's 100% related to crypto in that. And I have goosebumps because this is how I think about this. I think I said this earlier. We used to have silos of information, whether it was by country, right? United States, other countries, etc.
Right.
But then also within the United States, like silo, say in New York City with a financial, right? Like education, literacy, the way you can think about derivatives that nobody else in the fucking country that understands.
Right.
And these silos are like breaking down. So like you were mentioning about innovation, when you think about those silos breaking down and you are in a different part of the country than I'm in, and we're able to have this conversation, and there's millions of these conversations going. Like I talked to this kid in fucking Africa because he doesn't know how to make money, and I was like, here, do this, and reach out to me next week. Okay, cool. Now do this over this next week, and then reach out to me. And now he's like got a business idea, and he's going to go start implementing it. I was like, bro, this is fucking awesome.
This is something I talk about, man, because I always talk. Everyone wants to, dude. I'm getting goosebumps now too. So this is
right, dude. This is awesome shit.
Now we're talking crypto. So that's what I discuss with people because everyone wants to chase the gains, and it's difficult to give people advice when you've had the pleasure of riding a pump. It's like history might rhyme in the future, but that's no guarantee of ROI. That's not an investment strategy. Is that history might rhyme, and so it is difficult to just say like, hey, go chase these mad gains. The real question is, though, what would you do if you got those mad gains? If you have all the money in the world, what is it even worth? Well, it's only worth whatever you can do with it or whatever you're going to inevitably do. So there is this human obligation that I feel to try to just improve everyone's opportunity at taking that step forward. Right now, we're kind of coming out of an old world where very select few had the resources or were trusted with resources to take on risks to move the world forward. I think now we're moving into a paradigm of abundance, despite what the scary news media might convince you of. I do believe that there's enough abundance with technology and with humanity that we're able to sew together the differences and the schisms of the past and create more innovative products to help people, not just to chase dollars, because the money isn't worth anything. It's that trust, it's that social contract that matters. Well, I don't have children. I don't think you have children. And a lot of people that do have children, right, because I am a child, I can at least hear from parents, and I've worked at daycare, they're oriented on the future, looking to provide a better future for their people. Well, having all the money in the world sounds really good if you live in a world that money is just to acquire food. But if you imagine a world where the social contracts evolve to, I can't even fathom it. I mean, that's how far away that sort of utopia is, where the finance isn't this shackle anymore, but it's actually like the wind at your back, and it just gives you enough cushion and enough guidelines with the community around you that people can try to help you avoid making horrible life decisions. People will still, can't save everybody, but the improvement of quality can't be denied, I think.
And even if you're in the same, like, so to speak, financial, like physical space, but having access to the information allows this to change, which then allows these and like the stories evolve around you, so that like where even though I might, like, I bought this house and I moved away for a while, rented out, came back, and now I'm living here again, like you're physically in the same spot, but it's so different because this has evolved and changed by having conversations, right, with smart, intelligent people who have different POVs than me, and expanding that. It is such a awesome time. Like, I'm got all this bad shit.
Like, that's learning. That's great.
Right? Yeah. And letting go of the ego and allowing it's exciting time. I wanted to ask you about liquidity providing, and this will probably be the last topic we'll get into. You said you did, but I'd love to do it again, maybe next week or something or whatever. But liquidity providing for your loans with the MBA. Yep. How does that work? Because I would definitely want to provide liquidity. I'm curious to learn how it works and what type of yield, like how much money do you put in, and like what were you earning, and how did you leave it in there? Do you take it out? Like just the whole story around it.
Sure. So it sucks, man, because this is the same advice that I took, but it was the only advice that actually worked. So to get your hands around liquidity, you probably just got to try providing a little liquidity. I think I started with $250. Maybe it was $500. Maybe it was $250 of value on each side, and just to see how much is my $500 still there, or what is it worth now?
So what was the pair? What was the pair you picked? Then you say if it was 250, maybe it was 125 each, whatever it was.
The first thing I ever did for liquidity providing, because I was super nervous about it because I didn't have anyone holding my hand. I saw a YouTube video on staking cake, just the individual single asset. So I was like, okay, if this works, then these higher risk things definitely work, because otherwise everyone would just be doing this thing. And I didn't make killer bank. It was more of a bull market back then, so I actually made money on just staking cake, but not not the 100x or anything like that. So then I did a stable pair. I think it was BUSD and BUSDT. So just two stables. And I was getting not much. I was getting, I want to say 8% on that. 8%.
Oh, that's not okay. So that's not. It's
not bad, but it's not like crypto gains. It's not like what people expect on crazy crypto gains. But it was enough that I had a couple outstanding loans that were close to being paid off, and it was enough to make those payments. So it was a preservation of capital and enough to pay off this thing that I was just getting ready to knock off the ledger. So that's why I had some of the allocation there, was I wanted some cash flow even just on the immediate term. Sure, it might not be as lucrative as a 15-year hex stake and getting all of that money at the end, but you want to use some of your money now too. So I think it is a huge, liquidity providing is a huge tool if you've got some money to use as a portion of your strategy. There's a lot of arbitrage, or not necessarily arbitrage, but sort of straddling strategies that you could do depending on which assets you get involved in.
Did you try any of those things that Crypto Sloth was talking about, where sometimes you have 1,500% opportunities and stuff like that?
No, see, those are the things I want to learn about. I've done liquidity providing, and I've put some serious money behind an LP pool, but an LP pool I'm familiar with. I'm very familiar with this particular asset, but I'm by no means the LP expert. So I listen to guys like Walrus because I know that he does a lot of that stuff. And then I wanted him to send that resource because it sounds like that's something to get your hands dirty on. Even if someone's not going to be able to sit down and just show you where the juice is, I'll find it.
So if I think about LPs, right, and I don't know, I haven't done it yet, and I think what you said earlier, where you gotta fucking do it, Sam. You're 100% correct. How do you describe sex to somebody? Well, you can't. You put the fucking penis in the vagina. You gotta go have sex, dude. You just gotta go have sex. And you can start with $250 or $500 or whatever the case is to get rolling. Okay. When you were doing that, did you just allow that to accrue? I know you said you were using some of it to pay off a loan, or does it just automatically stays in the pool so you don't have to do anything?
Yeah, so it stayed in the pool. I would let it accrue depending on how the performance had done. I think once or twice I didn't withdraw after the month because I was using it each month to make a payment. I think there were only 2 times out of about the 8 months that I was using that particular allocation that I didn't withdraw, and that was just because things didn't perform super duper hot. But I also didn't need the money that bad. I had cash, I could use the cash. But that was my learning strategy. Was I had this real small monthly obligation, and then I was okay, well, how can I kind of get my hands dirty with liquidity providing, and can I do enough of it to just solve this one little puzzle? Because if I can solve that and not suck at it or be blind, maybe I can raise the stakes on that dynamic in the future.
Oh, so you're talking. I just had an awesome idea. Okay, so go back to refinancing the house for a second. I'm in the process of doing that, right? I got to submit the rest of the loan documents. It's 100% on me. I just haven't done that.
What?
$100,000. Say you do it for 2 years, right? So say that's $500 times a year. That's $6,000. So say it's $12,000, $13,000 that you put as a reserve. Instead of leaving that shit in fiat, like what if you just leave 1 or 2 months in fiat? So say if it's 14 grand, you say, and there's $500, so you take 1,000 or $1,500, 90 days worth, and you put that into fiat that just pays the bill automatically. You take the remaining 14 minus, so you take like 11 and a half or something. You take 11 and a half as 2 stable coins,
right?
And then that subsidizes your payment.
Or go crazy and E-hex, P-hex.
Because here's the thing, like,
with a portion.
So if you because I don't know enough about, because you could take, like, so say if it's 11,500, you take 1,000 of that, put 500 on one of those things. It's like 300%, 250%, 600%, 1,500. What he was talking about, right? Because then if you, if you run the numbers at 1,500%, like your money doubles, I think in 10 days or something like that. It's crazy. So you just every 5 days on something like that, you just rip off half of it, like, because there has to be some type of risk that I don't understand with this, whether it's rug pull or something.
Yeah, when he said minimal volatility or like risk of impermanent loss, it's like, I wonder what that really means. Like, what's this project that has so much support or needs so much support that they're rewarding so much, and yet people aren't just getting burned, and yet they're not cranking down the reward. It seems bizarre.
Oh, damn. So wait a second. So if I had, say, 11,500, so what's 10% of 10% is 1,100, so 5% would be enough to make a payment. So all I need to do is earn about 5% on that to make my payment, and then I wouldn't even have to use that money, and that would pay for the payments without actually using up the capital, bro. This is awesome,
right?
Dude.
That's the thing is, like, I didn't want to go crazy because at first when I was hearing about the liquidity provided with stables, I was like, what if I just put all of my, and then it's like, well, the yield isn't as much as some of like the people out there. A lot of people will say like, oh, well, there's some 40% stable APYs out there, and it's like, okay, and then you look at it, it's like, well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, maybe they're algorithmic and there could be volatility and shit like that. But there's opportunities out there. I don't know about all of them, man. So that's why I'm always willing to be like, oh, you know, the best LP, like, I know you don't want everyone sucking up the yield, but if you like me enough to send me a DM, I'm happy to learn from you. And that's where,
bro, that means I wouldn't even have to pay the premium to set up the options type of payoff. Right. That's crazy.
I'm trying to really work on getting my grandfather to move like his most conservative legacy funds into just like crypto stablecoin. Like, just have that be like a swap in your portfolio and just watch it outperform like bonds or whatever you're gonna do.
Wow. Okay. That is, I gotta run the numbers again on this. Like,
think about the Hex USDC or whatever the stable might be, like whatever the predominant stable might be on Pulsechain. Wrapped Ethereum Hex bridged into Pulsechain and some kind of stable coin on Pulsechain that's pegged to the US dollar. And then you're thinking, well, the impermanent loss here, if I'm left with a ton of Hex.
But a permanent loss is like it's like unrealized gains or unrealized losses.
Right. So if you're more risk averse, maybe you say like, well, if they beat me up in this scenario, because the scenario, like, you're valuing everything by the US dollar, right? So if they beat me up and they leave me with a ton of Hex and the price of Hex is crashing, well, you wouldn't be in crypto, or at least in Hex, if you didn't think the future was going to be better than the present. So that might not be a horrible impermanent loss to be sitting with. On the flip side, because you're using this as earning fees to pay off of payment, if you're being left with tons of stable coin because people are buying up all of the Hex, okay, well, now you have a guaranteed no volatility. You're just going to take this straight into your payment network or whatever to pay off your loan. So there might be something there. It's a higher risk, right? There's real impermanent loss there compared to stables, but that's why I think building buckets or portfolios that allocate properly, like when he's putting up that price matrix, those are the things that we need to start circulating as a community. Some people are really competitive and they don't like to do that, but
this is stupid. Like, this is like, why? I mean, and nobody do what I'm about to say. Why not leverage the fuck out of fiat and just like, if you, if I can get more than 5% in earned in LP, and I take 80% as two stables as a pair, and that's earning 7% or something, and then I take the extra 20% and I put that into like two different buckets that each earn 60%. Like every month, I can easily make the payment, and if not, I can float it myself if I need to, or just have that reserve of 6 months or some 3 month, some period of time where it's ready to go, and that way I can keep funding that bucket, that 3 month bucket from. Dude,
yeah,
I gotta run this.
And hey, if you don't pay back that legacy loan, all you've done is help collapse the system. So open your own bags while you're in prison.
Oh, dude, this has been awesome. This has been great. So tell people, like, show something, like your.
Sure. So the name now on Twitter is Crypto Curricula. I will be trying to put together a website. 99% of the content is going to be free. I'm going to charge if people want services to like really hold their hand and walk them into crypto. If they just truly just don't have people in their social circles that can help them, I'm happy to do that. But that is my time. For the most part, though, it'll be evergreen content. And the idea, I already own the domain. It's cryptocurricula.org. So it'll even sound a little more official to the normies out there. And it'll serve as just a really transparent, from kindergarten all the way to collegiate level understanding of crypto, different dynamics in the marketplaces, things like that. So Crypto Curricula on Twitter and on YouTube now as well.
Dope, awesome. And when you start diving more into that and you're doing each step of that, feel free. We can talk about it on
Would love to.
if you want to. Like, I think that stuff is awesome. Thank you for everybody. Wow, this has been a fantastic, like, first time really going into the live. Thank you for being a part of that. Like, and thanks for anybody. Yeah, everybody here that's been in the chat. Like this has been fantastic. I hope everybody enjoys the weekend, and we'll talk soon, brother. Have a great night.
Yeah.
Peace out, brother. Yes.